The story begins deep inside a dangerous dungeon where three powerful adventurers have just finished an intense battle. Working together, they managed to defeat hundreds of demons and even forced the Demon King to retreat. One of the warriors, named Gorin, is extremely proud of what they accomplished. Even though they failed to kill the Demon King, he believes they dealt enough damage to leave him badly wounded. The blonde hero, named Eric, agrees with him. He says the injuries they inflicted should be enough to keep the Demon King from attacking again for quite some time. The third member of the group, a mage named Luck, seems far less interested in celebrating their victory. Instead, he keeps staring at one of the Demon King's severed arms that was cut off during the battle. Gorin and Eric tell Luck to stop worrying about the arm and simply enjoy the fact that they survived. They jokingly tease him by saying that being such a nerd about strange things like this is probably the reason he still has not found a girlfriend. Changing the subject, Eric says they should hurry back home because the battle caused him to miss the birth of his child. Luck hears that and says moments like that are exactly why he has chosen to stay single. But Eric and Gorin immediately disagree with him. They explain that having a family should never be seen as a burden. To them, it is one of the greatest blessings a person can have. Before the conversation can continue, a large group of demons suddenly appears and surrounds the three adventurers from every direction. Luck quickly studies the situation. He immediately realizes that after everything they have already been through, there is no chance they can win another direct battle in their exhausted condition. Without wasting a second, Luck creates 3 magic circles at the same time. He then tells Gorin and Eric to leave everything to him and escape while they still can. Eric and Gorin immediately shout back at him. They tell him to stop saying such ridiculous things because there is no way they are going to abandon him. Luck does not argue with them. Instead, he silently casts an earth barrier. A massive wall of earth suddenly rises between them, trapping Eric and Gorin outside the battlefield while leaving Luck alone to face the demons. Eric and Gorin desperately pound on the barrier and yell at Luck to stop this madness. However, Luck refuses to listen. He calmly reminds them that they both have families waiting for them back home. That is exactly why they have to survive, even if it means leaving him behind. As the demons surge toward him, Luck unleashes an energy spell that tears through the first wave and drops them where they stand. Standing over the bodies, he recognizes the uncomfortable truth that he's already pushing the edge of what he has left, and the demons show absolutely no sign of stopping. Things take a sharp turn for the worse when the demon general suddenly materializes, grabs him by the throat, and begins draining his life force directly. When she tosses him aside and walks toward him slowly, clearly expecting to finish things, Luck turns her own technique against her, using the same mana-absorbing skill right back on her and exercising her on the spot. That kind of instant adaptation is only possible because of a unique learning ability Luck carries that allows him to absorb and replicate any spell used against him. What follows is several months of grinding through that same dungeon, cutting down demons without end. Whenever exhaustion caught up with him, Luck would cast a spell called Marionette, a technique that keeps his body fighting on its own even while he sleeps, letting him recover without ever fully stopping. After months of this cycle, Luck begins to wonder whether he's finally cleared the place out. Then the Demon King suddenly comes back, hurling a massive fireball straight at him. Luck throws up a barrier and absorbs the hit, genuinely stunned that the Demon King has recovered this quickly given the beating he took the last time around. He charges in and attempts his Drain Touch, but the Demon King counters with an invisible barrier that absorbs the skill entirely. From there, Luck finds himself being steadily overwhelmed, and the situation reaches a low point when the Demon King's hexblade shatters his sword completely. Left without a weapon, Luck abandons close combat and shifts entirely to sorcery, firing off his imprisoning Hellfire and Drain Touch simultaneously. Both attacks connect at the same time, putting the Demon King in an impossible position. He can either burn alive in the Hellfire or have his life force consumed by the Drain Touch. He has no good answer for either. A blinding explosion follows, and when the light finally fades, Luck crawls up from the ground and takes stock of the situation. The Demon King is finished. He lets out a quiet celebration, takes the Hexblade as his prize, and heads for the surface. Once he gets there, he quickly realizes he has no idea where he actually is. On top of that, his adventure card was incinerated somewhere during the fighting, leaving him completely broke and without any form of identification to his name. After that, he heads to the royal capital. The moment moment he arrives, the guards stop him and call him out for walking around naked, and they end up giving him some new clothes to wear. His first thought is to go straight to Goran's house. When he gets there, he's shocked at how massive the mansion is. He asks right away to see Goran, but the butler turns him down, assuming Luck is just another fan trying to meet him. After that, Luck decides to head to the Adventurers Guild to get his guild card reissued. On the way, he notices a stone statue standing in the middle of town that wasn't there before. He asks a passerby about it, and the man is stunned that Luck doesn't recognize who it is. He explains that the statue is of Saint Luck, the famous hero who fought in the dungeon to hold back the demons for an entire decade. Luck suddenly realizes the statue is of him, and that everyone must have assumed he died in the dungeon, which is why they built it in his honor. He is also surprised to learn that he spent 10 years fighting there without even realizing it. After that, he finally makes his way to the Adventurers Guild, where Goran recognizes him instantly. Goran pulls him into the back room and embraces him, crying tears of joy and telling him how glad he is that he came back alive. Luck then starts stuffing his face with cakes, since it's been so long since he's had real food. Eventually, Goran takes the cakes away from him, insisting he needs to eat rice gruel instead to keep a balanced diet. Eric then arrives in style, carrying the rice gruel himself, and tells Luck how happy he is to see him again. Luck simply tells him to calm down, saying the sight of a grown man crying doesn't sit well with him. Setting that aside, Eric points out that both he and Goran have visibly aged, while Luck, strangely, looks younger than before. Luck glances at his reflection and realizes it's true. He really has gotten younger. He guesses it must be the result of absorbing the Demon King's life force after defeating him. Goran and Eric are left completely speechless the moment they learn that Luck actually defeated the Demon King. Eric explains that the kingdom has been busy preparing its military in case the Demon King ever returned. But since Luck has already beaten him, it's now clear that he deserves some kind of reward. What catches Luck most off guard is the moment Goran refers to him as Your Majesty. Goran explains that Eric became king after the previous king decided he deserved the throne, since Eric was a noble who took part in driving away the Demon King. Having taken part in that same effort himself, Goran ended up being named Grandmaster of the Adventurers Guild. Along with that, Luck also learns that Eric had given him a noble title for the part he played in driving away the Demon King. That's why the statue had been built, since everyone assumed he died in the line of duty. Hearing this makes Luck wonder if being alive now might actually cause problems. Since the whole kingdom believes he's dead, Goran and Eric both see his point, so Luck decides to let the world go on thinking Saint Luck is dead, while he starts over from scratch as an ordinary adventurer. Goran wonders if that might be far too dull for someone of his level, given that he's an S-rank sorcerer, but Luck tells him it'll be fine, since he's always liked a good adventure. It doesn't take long for Goran to get him a new adventurer's card, this time under the name Luck instead of Luck. His true stats are also hidden on the card, so to anyone looking, he'll appear to be nothing more than an ordinary F-rank adventurer. The next day, as Luck heads out toward the guild, a blonde girl spots him from a distance and watches him with quiet curiosity, wondering just who he is. Luck arrives at the guild shortly after and is introduced to the receptionist, Aron. He tells her he'd like to take on a goblin extermination quest, but she advises against it, assuming he's just an inexperienced rookie who's likely to get himself killed. That's when a group of adventurers calls out to him, suggesting they team up for the quest together. Aron likes the sound of that and quickly stamps her approval. Outside, the two adventurers introduce themselves as Ario and Ginny. Ario is a mage, while Ginny is an archer. Luck introduces himself simply as a warrior, and with that settled, the three of them set off toward the goblin hideout. Along the way, Luck notices that Ginny is a genuinely skilled scout. She sticks close to the trail and reads it with sharp instinct, quick to catch details others might miss. Because of that, she doesn't strike him as someone who truly belongs at F rank. Even so, Ginny seems to have underestimated just how many goblins they're dealing with, since neither of them notices a set of camouflaged footprints. Goblins aren't clever enough to hide their own tracks, which means something else, something smarter, is likely leading them. Locke briefly considers warning the other two, but decides against it. Since he's essentially training them, he wants them to learn through their own mistakes and grow from the experience. They eventually reach the entrance to the Goblin Cave, and after scouting the area for a while, Locke offers to take the lead while while Ario and Ginny provide covering fire from behind. Working together, the group manages to take down more than 30 goblins, though the strain is clearly starting to wear on Ario and Ginny, both running low on mana and arrows. Noticing this, Ario suggests they pull back and retreat, and Locke agrees it's the right call. But just then, a deep roar echoes through the cave. The Goblin Lord has awakened. Locke finds the whole situation strange, since the goblins have been showing an unusual level of coordination all along, almost as if someone has been directing them from the shadows. Just as the Goblin Lord gets ready to attack, a beast girl suddenly appears out of nowhere, throwing herself into the fight and warning the Goblin Lord to stay out of her way. Angered by her taunt, the Goblin Lord swings his heavy club at the beast girl. She dodges the attack with a nimble grace, then strikes his shoulder with her blade. However, the monster's armored flesh is too thick for her to cut through. Realizing she's in for a tough fight, she tells Locke's party to escape while they still have the chance. Locke tells Ario and Ginny to leave first, so they nod. They wonder if he'll be okay on his own, but he seems more concerned for them. Locke warns the two to watch out for surprise attacks on the way out. As they leave, Locke praises Ario for leaving instead of sticking around for the sake of friendship. If he had done so, he would only have been a dead weight in a fight above his pay grade. Meanwhile, as the beast girl struggles against the Goblin Lord, Locke casually asks her if she needs help. Feeling angry that he ignored her warning to run, the girl tells him to do whatever he wants. However, she warns him to stay away from the fight since she doesn't trust his abilities. Locke observes her fight, seeming bored by the dull action. He tells the girl that she's losing to the goblin, which hurts her pride. She wonders if Locke thinks she's weaker than the monster, but he explains that he was actually referring to her sword. As if on cue, the beast girl's sword suddenly shatters from the Goblin Lord's relentless onslaught. With the girl seemingly unarmed, Locke asks if she'll consider his help now. However, she still refuses and tells him to get out of the cave. She pulls out another sword from its scabbard and charges the Goblin Lord, ready to defeat him with a fresh weapon. Suddenly, her momentum is instantly crushed as the Goblin Lord actually knocks the sword out of her hand. This time, Locke decides to stop playing, and he directly jumps into the fight. The girl watches, shocked, as he confidently claims that he'll destroy the monster by himself. The Goblin Lord roars at Locke to stun him, causing the girl to cover her eyes. However, Locke remains completely unaffected, and he divides the goblin into 4 pieces with just one attack. Seeing the strange man defeat such a powerful monster like it was nothing, the beast girl suddenly catches feelings for Locke, her warrior instincts stirred by his manliness. However, when he asks her if she's okay, she feels somewhat afraid of him. She then introduces herself as Ja, daughter of the chief of the Eastern Beast tribe. She sincerely thanks him for saving her life before asking about his identity. Locke suddenly claims he's an F rank, so she obviously doesn't believe him. Then, he proudly shows her his F rank card. Seeing this, Ja has no choice but to accept the reality. However, she wonders why he's so happy about being at the very bottom. He ignores her concerns and asks about her adventurer rank. Ja reveals that she's a B rank and apologizes for asking him to leave earlier. At the time, she had no idea that she was speaking to someone miles stronger than her, understanding that she was simply concerned for someone who looked weak. Locke reassures her that he doesn't mind. He then asks her what kind of monster dwells in the very bottom of the dungeon. Hearing this, Ja becomes speechless, since the dungeon boss was supposed to be a secret. Although Ja tries to hide it at first, Locke easily sees through her lies. Seeing that she doesn't want to expose her secret, he turns around and starts heading deeper into the cave. Ja wonders what he's doing, so he tells her that he plans to defeat the final boss on his own. Although Locke was only hired for a small quest to exterminate goblins, he feels worried that the dungeon's final boss will harm the people living in the surrounding area. Hearing his words, Ja suddenly tells him that the final boss is no laughing matter. For some reason, she completely forgets that its identity was supposed to be a secret. She reveals that the final boss is a vicious vampire lord, leagues above the Goblin Lord. Locke admits that vampires are a much more troublesome foe. However, he remembers that she was trying to clear out the dungeon, so he wonders if she was seriously considering fighting the vampire on her own. He reminds Ja that a vampire is a powerful creature, so there's no way that someone like her can defeat one on her own. Ja knows he's right, but she claims that it's her duty to defeat the vampire. Locke nods and starts starts walking again, which leaves her disappointed, wanting to share her story. She starts speaking, even though he didn't ask her. A while back, Zha's tribe was fighting an entire clan of vampires. Although they had defeated most of them, one of them survived and heavily injured her father. Then, it fled the scene and vanished into this cave. In the Beastman tribe, letting an enemy escape is considered a great disgrace. Hence, she wants to avenge her injured father by defeating the vampire herself. Locke asks her if her honor will still be restored if she takes his help. Zha explains that it will be, even if she receives assistance. So, he hands her his sword to replace the one that was broken. Zha feels confused, since this would leave him empty-handed, but Locke claims that he fights better barehanded. At first, she thinks he's only being polite for her sake, but then he proceeds to destroy a bunch of goblins like they're made out of paper. Zha is stunned by Locke's incredible strength, unaware that he developed incredible strength and martial arts skill after being forced to survive against the Demon Lord's army for an entire decade. With Locke's help, they soon reach the dungeon's final room. There, the vampire lord laughs sinisterly as it senses Zha's presence. He reminds the naive girl that even her powerful father was unable to scratch him, so she has no hope of laying a single hand on his body. Zha gets enraged by his words, and the vampire lord prepares to take her down. After seeing him up close, Locke realizes that the vampire deliberately manipulated the nearby goblins to appear weak so he could lure adventurers inside and drain their life force. The vampire is impressed by his deduction skills, but he doesn't think much of Locke's strength. He points out that although vampire magic does not work on Beastmen, he can actually control a human's mind with his spells. Hearing this, Zha realizes she messed up by dragging Locke into her mess. Although Zha tries to warn him, Locke starts moving towards the vampire lord in a trance. As Zha blames herself for endangering his life, the vampire starts gloating, thinking he has already won. He taunts Zha to choose whether she wants to die by her friend's hand or his own. The vampire continues to bluster, but suddenly, Locke punches him smack in the face. After getting humbled, the vampire wonders why his special technique didn't work. Locke simply explains that he has a high resistance to mental debuffs, but his explanation doesn't satisfy him. The vampire claims there's no way a human could resist a vampire lord's attack. Hearing this, Locke exposes the so-called vampire lord for actually being a lesser vampire pretending to be great. This causes the vampire to grow enraged, and he furiously charges at Locke, only to get punted back into a wall. Locke continues to mock the vampire, calling him a lesser version, so the vampire tries to avenge his good name. Although he attacks with tendrils of darkness, Locke easily avoids them and uses a high magic circle to drastically speed up his body. In the blink of an eye, he appears right in front of the vampire and uses his drain touch to suck all of his energy. After getting defeated, the vampire lord wonders who Locke truly is. In response, the happy adventurer claims that he's just a random F-rank adventurer. Suddenly, the vampire claims that Locke has unleashed a powerful curse on himself by defeating him. Although he doesn't believe the vampire's words, Zha rushes in and cleaves its body in half with Locke's blade. The vampire is shocked to realize that he can't regenerate his body after the sword's slash. In his last moments, he warns Zha that she has done something irreversible to his metal. Zha returns Locke's sword, saying that it released a strange power when she cut through the vampire. He claims that she was just imagining it, since he can't just reveal it's the fallen demon lord's sword. Then, Zha digs through the ground and finds a cursed medallion dropped by the vampire. She explains that every person the vampire kills or absorbs releases an energy of resentment, which nourishes a curse power in the metal. Locke wonders why no vampires had these medallions 10 years ago. Suddenly, the vampire laughs with his remaining strength. Since his metal is exposed to the world, he claims that it will open a portal to the dark dimension. Hearing this, Locke finally gets serious. The vampire brags that his supposed dark gods will destroy the earth by entering from the portal, so Locke recalls that the dimensional rift is the same place where he was stuck fighting for 10 years. At the time, the humans had not discovered any way to enter the portal from their world. When the demon lord attacked from his portal, Locke and his friends jumped in. However, the portal closed off later in their world. Because of this, Eric and Goran could not return to rescue him after escaping the dimension. Suddenly, Locke slashes the coin in two and absorbs the curse power inside. The vampire is shocked, unable to believe that someone could absorb such a potent curse power without any side effects. Locke tells the vampire that even if the portal had opened, there would have been no demons coming out of it. The reason behind it is obviously himself, since he has already exterminated all of the demons inside. After hearing this, the vampire finally realizes that Locke used the demon lord's sword to absorb the curse, and he makes the connection. He wonders if Locke is the legendary great sage Locke. However, Locke shuts his mouth before he can say too much. Unfortunately, Ja has already heard him, so the cat is out of the bag. Locke apologizes for breaking the metal. Ja doesn't mind it, so both of them start heading out of the dungeon. She wonders if Ario and Ginny are doing okay, but Locke is confident in their abilities. Suddenly, Ja stops as she realizes that she addressed him by his first name. He stops, stunned by her words. She then asks if he really is the legendary sage, so Locke asks her to keep it a secret. She smiles, feeling excited to carry the secret of such a great personality. Later, they hand over the monster drops to the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist is surprised by the gigantic pile of materials, so Locke and his party explain that the dungeon just had more goblins than usual. Hearing this, the receptionist apologizes on the guild's behalf for misjudging the mission's difficulty. Later, Ja thanks Locke again for all his help. He smiles, asking if she can share her tribe's intel on vampires in return. Although he was able to defeat the vampire lord today, he feels worried that other vampires could use unknown methods to plunge the world into the dimensional rift's chaos again. Ja smiles, asking if he can speak directly to Goran. Locke nods, so she tells him to alert Goran to be on the lookout for vampires. She then offers him half of her medallion. When Locke asks why, she explains that it will serve as proof to convince Goran to keep an eye on the vampires. Locke accepts the medallion, and Ja leaves. He then takes it to Goran, who seems extremely worried after Locke disappeared for 3 whole days. While the two of them chat, someone quietly sneaks up to the room to eavesdrop on their conversation. After reminding Goran that he's not his mother, Locke explains that the demon lord was actually just a pawn used by the so-called dark gods. Goran wonders what material the medallion is made of. Despite his skills as a sorcerer, Locke is also unable to identify the material. He suggests showing it to an alchemist, and Goran agrees to consider it. As Locke turns to leave, Goran sincerely thanks him for protecting the rookie adventurers, Ario and Ginny. Locke accepts his thanks and heads out, but soon bumps into a girl. He wonders who it is, so Goran starts introducing her as his daughter, Chelis. However, she leaves before he can say anything else. Locke wonders if Chelis hates him, but Goran explains that she actually hates her own father. Since her childhood, Chelis has wanted to become an adventurer. Although she got a B rank ability, Goran refused to let her become one, worried that she would get hurt because of her inexperience. Locke reminds him that one can only get experience in the real world, but Goran refuses to let his daughter outside before consulting his wife, who is currently visiting a foreign nation. Then, he asks Locke for a favor. Goran explains that once his daughter turns 15, she will be considered an adult and allowed to become an adventurer on her own. Because of this, he hopes that Locke can keep an eye on her when she eventually escapes. The next day, Locke watches Chelis train with her sword, feeling annoyed that he has to babysit her from now on. However, Chelis gets even more annoyed as she catches him looking. Later, while Locke is having lunch at Goran's mansion, Chelis enters the room and sits across from him. Under her intense glare, Locke feels awkward and expects some kind of insult or rejection. Instead, she suddenly accuses him of being her father's illegitimate son, causing him to break his teacup in shock. Locke instantly denies her assumption, but Chelis thinks he's lying. He wonders how she's so sure, so she explains that she has all the evidence against him. Firstly, she points out that Goran waited for his wife to leave the house before inviting Locke inside. Second, she thinks that her father was a little too happy to see Locke, even though he is supposed to be just a friend. Finally, she recalls how worried her father got for Locke when he wasn't showing up. While Locke is annoyed by Goran's excessive concern, Chelis thinks that her father cares too much for him not to be a family member. Hearing Chelis's delusions and how Goran and his wife have fallen out, Locke wonders if this entire family is messed in the head. He then notices the head butler glaring daggers at him. To avoid his wrath, Locke tries to convince Chelis that he's not her long-lost brother. He explains that Goran was worried so much because he had been battling dangerous demons for 10 years. Also, Locke tells Chelis that he looks way younger than he is, which is why she mistook him for Goran's son. Hearing this, she gasps, and Locke thinks he has finally gotten through to her. However, Chelis only changes his status from younger brother to older brother. Locke firmly tells her that he's not her older brother. This time, she refuses to listen to another word from him. As Chelly's starts acting like a smug older sister, Locke decides to pull out his adventurer card and explains that if he were Goran's son, he would share his family name. After taking a look at it, Chelly's decides that Goran must have disowned Locke to protect his honor as a man. Feeling upset that Locke was abandoned by his supposed father, she promises to speak to Goran to acknowledge his son. Faced with this stubborn girl, Locke starts to lose all hope for Goran's family. In the end, he removes the protection spell from his adventurer card, revealing that he's actually the great sage Luck and an S-rank adventurer. Chelly's is extremely impressed by Locke's credentials, but because of his young age, she thinks that the great sage is still her older brother. She points out that Locke's statue looks just like her father, which enrages him even more. It takes a while for Locke to finally convince her he isn't her family. In the end, she apologizes for her earlier stubbornness. Chelly's herself admits that she can be stubborn, but Locke thinks that's an understatement. Now, he actually understands why Goran was so opposed to letting her adventure on her own. With her hard-headed nature, this foolish girl would get in trouble left and right. However, Locke also thinks that her stubbornness can be a plus point. He thinks that Chelly's has great willpower and strong conviction, which can help her stay strong during tough times. Knowing this, he decides to give her a chance at adventuring. Locke learns that Chelly's has already secretly joined the Adventurers Guild, so he takes her out to do a quest with him. After picking up an E-ranked quest from the guild, they head into a forest for their objective. Along the way, Chelly's enjoys exploring the natural scenery. She takes in the surrounding trees and takes a dip into a freshwater river, having the time of her life. After their break, they head deeper into the forest to find their objective. Eventually, they reach the target village. There, they learn from the villagers that a suspicious number of mythical beasts have been spotted in the nearby areas. Although these monsters are massive and powerful, for some reason, nobody has died upon encountering them. Hearing this, Locke thinks something is strange about the mission. If there were truly a group of powerful mythical monsters rampaging the area, the guild would have never assigned this mission to weak E-ranked adventurers. Instead, knowing that the beasts have not killed or hurt anyone, the guild likely thinks that these mythical beasts are fake. Chelly's doesn't understand what this means, so Locke explains that someone is simply creating illusions of mythical beasts. Soon, they head over to the area where the beasts were reported. Once they arrive, a dragon appears out of thin air, roaring powerfully to declare its presence. While appearing incredibly lifelike, the dragon's roar kicks up a massive cloud of dust into the air. Seeing this, Chelly starts to doubt if the monster is just an illusion. Locke reassures her that despite its looks, the dragon does not have the aura of a true mythical beast, so his earlier suspicions are confirmed. After telling Chelly's that she'll be safe against the dragon, he encourages her to fight it. She runs towards the dragon, which tries to swat at her with its tail. Chelly's dodges the attack with great agility and jumps up the creature's back. Then, she starts running towards the dragon's head. As the creature growls in frustration, she tries to stab her sword into its head. However, the dragon blocks her sword with its claws. Chelly's falls back and tries again, but it keeps blocking her strikes no matter what. While observing her fight, Locke admits that Chelly's is a genuine B-ranked warrior despite her sheltered upbringing. Still, he feels surprised that the dragon can physically block her attacks despite being an illusion. Usually, an illusion is not nearly as lifelike as this creature. Instead of a regular illusion spell, the dragon seems to be a massive, nearly solid wall of mana. Because of its concentrated nature, the mana can actually block Chelly's attacks. As Locke continues to observe, the dragon seems to get frustrated with Chelly's. It leans its head back, preparing a white-hot fireball in its mouth. Then, it blasts Chelly's with the fireball, who goes rolling away in pain. Seeing this, Locke finally decides to step in. He floats up and puts his hand on the dragon's head, copying the technique used to create it. Then, he uses his draining touch to absorb all of the mana inside. After defeating the dragon, he tells Chelly's to stop rolling like she's burning. She gets up, realizing that the flames weren't actually real. Locke explains that fighting an illusion head-on will always result in failure. Celis gets annoyed, wondering why he didn't warn her earlier. She also asks how to fight an illusion, so Locke tells her that she needs to defeat the illusionist. However, since illusionists usually hide themselves, it's hard to find their location. In case she can't find the target, the only choice left is to run. Hearing this, Celis gets angry, since she wouldn't want to run after wasting wasting so much effort. Locke reminds her that if a hidden illusionist decided to hurt her, she would literally die. Hearing this, she admits that running away definitely sounds better than dying. Locke explains that fighting an illusion head-on will always result in failure. Celis gets annoyed, wondering why he didn't warn her earlier. She also asks how to fight an illusion, so Locke tells her that she needs to defeat the illusionist. However, since illusionists usually hide themselves, it's hard to find their location. In case she can't find the target, the only choice left is to run. Hearing this, Celis gets angry, since she wouldn't want to run after wasting so much effort. Locke reminds her that if a hidden illusionist decided to hurt her, she would literally die. Hearing this, she admits that running away definitely sounds better than dying. Then, Locke turns around, knowing that the illusionist is still present. He calls out to the forest and asks them to reveal themselves. Since this person has not hurt anyone with their illusions, Locke promises to treat them kindly. After waiting for a bit, he doesn't get a reply. He then warns the illusionist that he'll investigate the matter by force since he's on a quest. Finally, the illusionist's voice comes out. He explains that they're guarding something precious in the forest. Locke asks if they can't move their precious item, so the illusionist admits that it's hard to move. Hearing this, Locke nods. Since he doesn't want to harm an innocent person's valuables, he doesn't mind ending the quest in failure. Hearing this, Celis gets very upset. Locke also reminds the illusionist that if he cancels the quest and returns, the guild will just send other adventurers to solve it. However, the other adventurers might not be as kind as him, so they might try to force the illusionist to reveal his secret. Hearing this, the illusionist finally agrees to show him what he's guarding. In his hiding place, a strange vortex opens up. Then, the hooded boy finally walks out into the open. As Celis sees the horns on him, she is shocked, so he quickly covers them. Meanwhile, Locke doesn't care for his species at all. Instead, he praises the boy for his superb illusion spell. After he thanks him for the compliment, Locke introduces himself as a random F-rank adventurer and introduces Celis as well. The boy explains that he's called Lucira, and he belongs to the fiend race. In a quiet voice, Celis asks Locke if they can trust Lucira, since fiends are evil beings. However, Locke corrects her misconception. Although fiends are beings with great mana, he explains that they are simply peaceful mages who prefer to avoid fighting. He then asks Lucira to show him the thing he is trying to protect. He nods and starts leading them into the forest, so Locke wonders why he's trusting them so easily. Lucira points out that Locke was easily able to see through his illusion, meaning that he's a much stronger sorcerer than himself. Despite this, he didn't try to investigate his secret by force, so Lucira thinks he's trustworthy. Soon, they arrive at an ancient ruin. Deep inside the ruin, Lucira opens the door to a secret room. Then, he tells someone called Lord Jeberga that he's back. As Locke follows him, he is shocked to see that Mr. Jeberga is actually a chicken, while Lucira seems to be incredibly respectful towards it. Celis casually dismisses it as a random chicken. Hearing this, Lucira gets enraged and informs her that Jeberga is actually a sacred creature called a Seraphal. Curious, Locke asks why he holds Jeberga in such high regard. Lucira then reveals that the magical bird possesses the power to change the world. He explains that Jeberga is descended from the original Seraphal, which awakened their world for the first day ever. According to legend, the Seraphals called helped define the boundary between day and night, which shaped their world into what it is now. Because of this, Mr. Jeberga has the power to open and close dimensional rifts. Hearing this, Locke remembers the words of the vampire, who told him that a portal will open in their world, allowing the dark gods to invade it. Locke wonders if the vampire's true target is Mr. Jeberga for this reason, and Lucira nods. He reveals that his tribe used to live peacefully in the north until the vampires invaded and killed everyone to steal the mighty chicken. However, the chieftain gave Mr. Jeberga to Lucira for safekeeping, and he somehow escaped the carnage alive. Ever since then, he had come to this temple, since his tribe had told him that the temple was protected by an ancient barrier. Suddenly, Locke stabs the floor of the temple. His sword easily breaks it, revealing that there's no barrier around the building. Since the temple is exposed, Lucira and Mr. Jeberga is in danger of falling into the vampire's hands. Locke asks him to move to the capital, where he will be protected. Lucira hesitates, so Locke reassures him that he'll protect Mr. Jeberga no matter what. As proof, he shows Lucira his sword, revealing that he has already defeated the demon lord. Realizing this, Lucira recognizes that Locke is the great sage. Locke then tells him that he is done a great job of protecting Mr. Jebberga, since he has the power to protect the world. Hearing this, Lucira starts crying, happy to know that the sacrifice of his family and tribesmen was not in vain. On their way out, Lucira starts bickering with Celis. Suddenly, Locke shoves Lucira away as a vampire tries to attack him. Then, he knocks the vampire away. Shocked, the vampire wonders who he is. Locke refuses to tell a lesser creature his identity, which causes the vampire and his buddies to get enraged, knowing that they're after Mr. Jebberga. Locke gets serious and incinerates all the vampires into ashes. Nearby, a vampire has been secretly observing their interaction. In order to warn his friends at home, this vampire tries to escape by transforming into countless bats. Even Locke is helpless against this transformation, but suddenly, Mr. Jebberga lets out a loud call. This call erases the vampire mid-transformation, which leaves Celis completely shocked. Lucira explains that Mr. Jebberga controls the flow of dimensions. By transforming into bats, the vampire was trying to forcefully shift into another dimension. However, Mr. Jebberga refused to allow this, so the vampire was erased from existence. Hearing that the chicken has such great power, Celis wonders why Mr. Jebberga needs anyone's protection. Lucira explains that the chicken's powers only work when the target is in the middle of dimensional travel. Otherwise, anyone can scoop it up like a regular bird. Later that night, the three of them reach the capital city. There, they find Ja waiting for Locke. Celis instantly gets suspicious of her, so Locke explains that she's a friend. Hearing this, she starts bragging to Ja about being Locke's apprentice. Then, Ja tells Locke that she needs to discuss something in private. She explains that the vampire race is truly up to something big. In her investigation, she found that they're all being led by a vampire High Lord, which is a powerful creature that can control all vampires to do its bidding. Hearing this, even Locke gets worried, since the High Lord can do incredible harm with his intelligence and powerful forces. Ja reassures Locke that her tribe is doing its best to thwart the High Lord's plan. However, Locke knows that her tribe alone can't handle an enemy of that level. Hearing this, Ja admits that her tribe isn't doing too well. Ever since her father went on that vampire hunt, he's been recovering from his injuries. Even now, he's not fit for battle against the High Lord's forces. Unfortunately, the rest of Ja's tribe is filled with warmongering idiots, so they voted to launch an attack against the vampires anyway. Hearing this, Locke understands why she needs his help. Aside from this, Ja admits that she has another goal. It turns out that this goal is even more important than fighting off the High Lord. Ja reveals that the vampires are after a legendary chicken, which is said to hold the power to control dimensions. With a sense of urgency, she tells Locke that they must find that chicken as soon as possible to protect it from the vampires. Hearing this, Locke is stunned, knowing that he just ran into the very same chicken a few hours ago. Seeing his blank reaction, Ja thinks he isn't treating the chicken too seriously. Locke tries to explain that he already knows, but she starts explaining more about Mr. Jebberga. After narrating all the legends about the mighty chicken, Ja hopes that Locke will help her protect it. Finally, Locke tells her that he has already found the chicken. Hearing this, Ja stops her explanation. Locke then gets up and walks over to the room's door. As he opens it, Celis falls inside, exposed as a cheeky eavesdropper. Behind her, Lucira gets upset, since he had already warned her not to spy on them. At first, Celis claims that she wasn't eavesdropping at all. Then, she's unable to come up with an excuse, so she eventually apologizes to Locke. He sighs, telling her to apologize to Ja as well. Celis quickly obeys, so Ja forgives her with a smile. As long as she doesn't leak the intel to someone else, she doesn't mind the young girl knowing. Then, Locke invites Lucira inside and introduces him as the guardian of Mr. Jebberga, as he tells Ja that the chicken in his arms is the legendary Seraphal she's looking for. She screams out in shock. Ja is amazed that Locke found her secret target so quickly, so he explains that it was just a coincidence. He admits that he has already seen Mr. Jebberga's powers in person, so they can be sure that this chicken is the real deal. After hearing this, Ja respectfully greets Mr. Jebberga. With the chicken secure, they start planning how to deal with the High Lord's forces. Ja explains that the vampires are hiding around a mountainous area, but Locke thinks the intel is too vague. She sighs, explaining that it already took her tribe a lot of sacrifice to find this information. If they want to learn more, they'll have to investigate the dangerous area on their own. Hearing this, Celis gets excited, thinking she'll get a chance to fight the High Lord's forces. However, Locke coldly bursts her bubble, pointing out that she's an inexperienced F rank. Hearing this, Celis complains that Ja is is still going with him. Locke reminds her that Ja is a proper B-rank adventurer, so she can hold her own in the wild. In addition, Ja's beast tribe requires her to fight against the vampires, so her situation is different from Celis. Thankfully, Locke knows how to comfort Celis as well. He assigns her the duty of protecting Mr. Gerberga at home. At first, Celis isn't convinced, but Locke reminds her that the magic chicken will be unguarded back at home if there's no one around to protect it. He tells Celis that she's completely qualified for being its guardian, so she finally cheers up and accepts his decision. Then, she hears the sound of Goran's carriage coming home. Ja is curious about her father, so Locke tells her that Celis is Goran's daughter. Soon, Goran enters the room, happy to see him. Locke is annoyed by the motherly treatment, but Goran thanks him for looking after his daughter. Locke smiles, giving Celis some praise for her strength. Hearing this, Goran gets even happier. Behind them, Celis feels guilty about treating her dad harshly. As she calls out in a soft voice, Goran turns to look at her. She then starts crying, which completely melts his defenses. Faced with his daughter's tears, he quickly forgives her and tries to calm her down. After she calms down, he asks why she was so angry with him in the first place. Celis explains that she suspected him of having an illegitimate child, so Goran laughs at her imagination. Then, she accidentally slips the detail that she treated Locke like her younger brother. Hearing this, Goran is shocked enough to spit out his tea. He asks Celis if she bothered Locke with her usual antics, so she runs away instead of answering the question. After she leaves, Goran hastily apologizes to Locke for all the trouble she has caused. Even he doesn't know how his own daughter turned out like this. Watching the poor man beg for forgiveness, Locke recalls that Goran used to put him and Eric in trouble as well with a similar attitude. Still, he remains silent to avoid provoking him anymore. Then, Goran gets up, worried that his daughter will get manipulated by someone evil. Now, he wonders if he should rethink his decision to let her explore the outside world again. Hearing this, Locke panics and reminds him that he'll protect Celis from any malicious people. Relieved that his daughter can still pursue her dreams, Goran starts crying and thanking Locke again. At this moment, Celis enters the room to ask for something. When she sees Locke and Goran standing so close, she thinks she's in some kind of romance novel and gives them some privacy. After that, it takes them both over an hour to explain that they're not secret lovers. Finally, Celis starts apologizing, but Locke tells her to remain silent in case she forms yet another ridiculous conclusion in her head. Getting back to work, Goran recalls that the vampires are regrouping for another scheme. Locke tells him about the High Lord, so he gets even more worried. To reassure him, Locke reminds Goran that he'll assault the vampire stronghold himself. Goran wonders if there's a way for Mr. Gerberga to make the fight easier for them. Lucira reminds him that Gerberga can only attack vampires mid-transformation. Also, Locke thinks it will be too annoying trying to actively protect the weak chicken while fighting the vampires on the battlefield, so it's better to leave it back at home. Ja also adds that if the vampire High Lord kills Gerberga and drinks its blood, he will obtain enough curse power to open a dimensional portal on his own. Hearing this, even Mr. Bergerga is shocked. Because of this, Locke decides that the chicken must be kept under maximum protection. Goran suggests hiding Mr. Gerberga in Eric's palace, since the royal building is the most secure place in their entire kingdom. Locke agrees, so Goran sends a request to Eric. A little while later, they obtain permission to enter the royal palace. Instead, they sit down for tea. As one of the maids serves them, she notices Mr. Gerberga in Lucira's arms. Meanwhile, Locke is surprised by the number of staff working inside the palace. Goran explains that all of these servants are Eric's young apprentices. As the king, he accepts the poorer children of the kingdom as apprentices to give them a better life. This is done as part of a welfare scheme, so Locke thinks that Eric is a good king. Soon, Eric enters the room with his two daughters. After he greets Locke, his daughters, Charlotte and Mary, also introduce themselves. While Charlotte is happy to see the sage Locke in person, Mary is so excited that she asks him for an autograph on her picture book. Seeing this, Locke gets stunned. He wonders where the picture book came from, so Eric explains that it was his idea to create picture books for the children across the kingdom, telling the stories of Locke's heroic adventures. Although Eric did this out of love for his friend, Locke feels uncomfortable at the thought of being a living legend. Lucira reveals that even Mr. Gerberga loves his storybooks, so Locke is completely flabbergasted. Then, as Mary notes the chicken, she asks Lucira for permission to pet it. Soon Soon, both girls start fawning over the magical bird. Seeing this, Goran tries to send the girls away so they can get to business with Eric. Celis takes the girls away, following a maid to another room so the adults can discuss things in private. Eric thanks Goran for coming before apologizing for bringing his girls, even though they're here for a serious talk. Eric wanted to show Locke his two daughters since they're his pride and joy. If Locke didn't make the sacrifice of staying in the demon realm, Eric could have never returned home to watch them grow. Goran also nods, thanking Locke for allowing him to raise Celis. He reminds Locke that the entire kingdom respects him as their hero, so he gets a bit flustered. However, Locke still thinks that he shouldn't be a national celebrity. Then, he asks Eric how Li-Fi is doing. He explains that she's handling the kingdom's holy order at the cathedral, so Locke promises to visit her later. Meanwhile, the maid leads Celis and the girls to a room. As they enter, she promises to bring sweets, but her eyes flicker with evil intentions. Back in the royal room, Eric learns about that High Lord's plan to open a portal to the dark dimension. For now, Locke thinks they should guard Mr. Gerberga most carefully to avoid accelerating the vampire's plan. Eric promises to use all his castle's defenses to protect the chicken, so Locke nods. Then, he looks at Jia, reminding her that it's time for them to hunt the vampire lord. Goran stops him in his tracks, wondering how he plans to defeat such a powerful foe. At this, Locke reveals his master plan. Both Goran and Eric listen intently as he explains that he'll first gather all of Jia's tribe members. Then, with the tribe providing cover for them, Locke and Jia will charge straight into the horde of vampires. Hearing this, both Goran and Eric are horrified by his lack of wit. Locke still thinks his plan works fantastically. He explains that if he and Jia distract the vampire army, the Beast tribe can send an assassination squad to kill the lone High Lord. Goran thinks he's got it backwards. Since the High Lord is the strongest of them all, Locke points out that fighting an entire army is still harder than one strong opponent, so the tribe will be better off leaving the army to him. Jia agrees with Locke as well, but she thinks that he's the only one who has the power to land the killing blow on the High Lord. Goran feels worried, thinking that some of the Beastkin will lose their lives. Jia explains that small sacrifices are nothing compared to fulfilling her tribe's desire for revenge. While their discussion continues, in the other room, Celis watches the young girls play. Although Locke assigned her a serious duty to guard Mr. Gerberga, she knows that he was just being kind. In reality, she's just an F-ranked girl being a babysitter for some kids. Knowing her strength, she thinks this role is the most suitable for her. Then, the girls walk over to her to play another game. Suddenly, they spot something glowing behind her, so Celis quickly turns around. One of the decoration pieces glows with a dark light, casting a strange spell that fills their room with a dark gas. Celis quickly tells the two girls to run away, but they find the door locked from the outside. Outside, the maid from earlier walks away, casually acting as if nothing happened. Suddenly, some vampires appear from the dark mist. Celis rushes to draw her sword, but then she realizes that her weapon wasn't allowed in the palace. With nowhere left to run, she grabs a nearby lamp to defend the young girls. As one of the vampires charges at her, Celis smashes him away with the lamp. Then, the other two vampires try to charm her with their eyes. Celis quickly covers her eyes, reacting just in time to protect herself. Then, she fights the other two with her eyes covered. Despite the disadvantage, she brutally beats up both of them. However, as she is in the middle of fighting, the first vampire lunges straight for the two girls. Celis quickly adjusts and blocks him before standing guard over the princesses. Although she continues to fight bravely, the vampires soon break her makeshift weapon. With nothing left to defend herself, Celis covers the two girls with her body and resigns herself to fate. At the last moment, just as the vampires reach for them, an explosion rings out as Locke blocks them. Locke praises Chelis for doing a great job of protecting the princesses. As she watches in shock, he turns to face the vampires, ready to wipe them out. The three vampires try to charm him, but to no avail. After their magic fails, one of them tries to charge Locke, so he traps them all in a barrier. Then, he compresses that small barrier around the three vampires, crushing their entire bodies to dust. Watching this scene, Celis finally gets a true taste of Locke's real power. After the vampires die, Goran and Eric catch up to them. Eric quickly hugs his daughters, relieved to see them safe. One of the girls tells him that Celis protected them, but she denies it, saying it was Locke who truly defeated the vampires. However, Locke tells her to take credit for it, since she held off the vampires long enough for him to arrive. Then, Lucira also comes in, worried about Mr. Gerberga. As everyone tries to calm down, suddenly, the decoration piece in the middle of the room starts glowing again. Seeing this, Locke identifies the item as a teleportation gate. Knowing that some vampires are trying to enter the castle, he disguises himself as a vampire lord with Lucira's illusion magic. As the vampires appear, they are shocked to see their 8th lord standing in front of them. Locke asks them why they're meddling in his business, so they quickly explain that they were acting on the 6th vampire lord's orders. Because the 3 vampires sent by the 6th lord died, they came here to investigate. Hearing this, Locke realizes that the 8th vampire lord must be weaker than the 6th, so he can use it as a cover story. He claims that the 3 lesser vampires were disrespectful toward him because of his rank, so he killed them as punishment. Hearing this, the 2 vampires respectfully nod in understanding. Then, he asks the vampires why the 6th lord sent them, so they explain they're here to capture Mr. Gerberga. Hearing this, Locke acts like their mission will interfere with the vampire High Lord's orders. Although the 2 vampires understand, they explain that the 6th lord was also given this task by the High Lord. To achieve his goal, the 6th lord has sent many charmed humans to keep an eye on the royal palace. Hearing this, Locke understands the situation and kills the vampires. He then asks if the decoration piece had always been in the princess's room. Celis shakes her head, explaining that the maid, Rona, had brought it inside. This means that the maid was charmed by the 6th lord to sneak a teleportation circle inside the room. As Celis hears this, she quickly runs off to arrest Rona. She also goes with her, so Locke tells Eric to hide his girls somewhere safer. Then, he tells Goran to guard Mr. Gerberga. Goran wonders why he's leaving the chicken to him, so Locke explains that he's going to enter the teleportation gate to kill the 6th lord. Although Goran is worried about him going alone, Locke quickly jumps into the gate before he can stop him. The gate leads him into a dark palace interior with only one door in sight. He barges through the door and kills the first batch of vampire grunts inside. From behind, some other vampire minions rush to attack Locke, but the vampire lord behind them kills them all. Seeing this, Locke isn't surprised that an evil monster would kill one of his own. The 6th lord comes forward, completely free of guilt, and prepares to fight him. Locke charges at him, so the vampire lord parries his attack. Seeing his sword match up against the demon lord's weapon, Locke tells the vampire to hand it over. He then pulls back and unleashes a lightning-fast slash at the vampire lord. This time, the vampire fails to block the attack, and the blade slices across his mouth. As he backs away in fear, Locke chops him in half before he can do anything else. The 6th lord wonders who this powerful warrior is. Locke tells him that he's just an F-ranked adventurer, so he doesn't believe him at all. Locke asks how his minions entered the royal palace, but the 6th lord refuses to speak. Seeing this, he drives a sword straight through his face. While dying, the 6th lord warns Locke to enjoy the good life he has until the dark day arrives. Then, he would meet his end at his master's hand. After delivering this warning, the vampire lord perishes, which exposes his curse metal. Locke quickly destroys the metal, releasing the resentment of thousands of innocent people who were slaughtered by the vampire's hand. Then, he hears a voice calling out for help in a nearby room. As he enters the room, he sees that the voice is also a leftover sentiment from someone who has already died in the prison. Seeing their skeleton, Locke kneels, frustrated that he couldn't save them in time. He then kills the rest of the lesser vampires inside the palace before going outside. There, he sees a completely desolate landscape. The entire village is empty, filled with fallen clothes that were once worn by the people living inside. During the time the 6th lord was here, he and his minions had already killed everyone to absorb their resentment. Locke walks through the village, taking in this depressing scenery. After a while, he returns home to the royal palace, where Eric and Goran are waiting for him. Locke informs them that he has killed the 6th lord, but he doesn't feel happy at all after seeing what happened to the innocent villagers. Hearing this, Goran admits that it's his responsibility as well. As the guild master, he should have been more careful about scouting for vampires and protecting the surrounding villages. At this moment, he can do nothing except arrange funerals for all the dead villagers. Meanwhile, Eric's palace staff arrests everyone who was charmed by the 6th lord. After Locke killed the 6th lord, some of the staff instantly turned to dust, revealing they had completely submitted to the vampires. On the other hand, many Many other staff like Rona fell unconscious since they were only charmed temporarily. Now, they are all imprisoned, waiting for treatment before they can leave. She tells Celis that there's still hope for Rona and the others, so she feels relieved. Still, Eric notes that this attack has completely exposed the lack of security in his palace. Now, he can't guarantee that he can keep Mr. Gerberga safe even inside the palace's bounds. Locke doesn't care too much, coldly announcing that he's going to kill the High Lord as soon as possible. Hearing this, both Eric and Goran get serious. Then, they get a mischievous glint in their eyes, which surprises Locke. Goran reminds him that if he wants to kill the vampire High Lord, he needs all the help he can get. Locke understands, but he also points out that both he and Eric have their responsibilities as the guild master and king. Eric thinks that his little brother would be a great replacement for him, while Goran points out that anyone else can become the guild master. However, nobody can fill the role of being Locke's most trusted friends and partners. Though Locke is surprised by their sudden enthusiasm, he feels pleased that his old friends are still willing to fight by his side. Watching this scene, Ja is excited beyond belief that the legendary sage's party will fight again. As Goran and the others prepare to leave, Celis asks her father to come along. However, he coldly refuses, pointing out that she would only slow them down with her abilities. Although she is disappointed, she knows she can't act like a spoiled brat about this serious mission. Then, Locke asks Goran to give her a good sword. He points out that although Celis isn't strong enough to fight the High Lord, she can still benefit greatly from a better weapon, even at her B-rank strength. Her method of fighting is extremely similar to her own father's, so she will perform much better with a larger sword. Goran wonders why he's asking this, so he explains that he just wants Celis to guard the princesses while they're gone. Hearing this, Celis cheers up, and Eric also agrees with Locke, since there's a chance that some vampires are still hidden in the royal castle. In this moment, Celis feels happy to receive such attention, but she wonders if Locke is only trying to make her feel better for staying home. After Locke's party leaves, she realizes that he was actually serious, as some lesser vampires try to invade the royal palace. This time, she is holding a magic sword instead of a broken lamp, so she feels no fear against them. Seeing the young girl point her sword at them, the vampires laugh. However, they quickly shut up as Celis instantly kills one of them. Then, she starts slashing through the rest of them before they can move. As she fights, Celis recalls Locke's tips for fighting vampires. Since these crafty devils can use charm spells, it's best to kill them before they can chant it. Knowing this, she uses her speed to finish them off quickly. However, some of the vampires get past her and try to attack Lucira to capture Mr. Gerberga from his arms. Suddenly, he lifts the cover from his arms, which releases a fire spell that incinerates the vampires. Seeing his sorcery, Celis smiles in admiration, but she gets no time to admire the scenery as more vampires appear in the area. Meanwhile, the real Mr. Gerberga is with Locke, who is on his way to the High Lord's stronghold. For some reason, the High Lord's stronghold is extremely close to Kingdom. Still, Goran notes that it's hard to find the stronghold since it's located in a mountainous area. Suddenly, a beastman appears and greets Eric. She explains that he's one of her tribe's chiefs. The chief explains that his tribe has already found the High Lord's location, but the stronghold is too heavily guarded to break through. At this, Eric thanks the beastman for finding the stronghold and asks him to leave the rest to his party. Locke looks up, noting that it's only sunset. Since vampires are nocturnal, it means that most of them are just waking up and unable to fight at full power. Still, in order to reach the heart of the stronghold to fight the High Lord, their party needs the beastman's help to distract the minion vampires. The beastman chief agrees to help them and leaves after asking Ja to fight with her tribe. Then, Locke hands her the Sixth Lord's vampire sword, which surprises her. Ja thinks that the weapon is too good for her, but Locke points out that everyone else in the party already has a good weapon, so she should have something just as good. After she takes the sword, they head to the vampire's hideout. When they arrive there, they feel confused, since the location only has some rocks. Seeing this, she points out that the vampires must have concealed their base. Locke agrees and uses an anti-concealment spell, which reveals a hidden temple within the rocks. Then, he casts a sleeping fog spell into the building to put all the lesser vampires inside to sleep. Now, they only need to deal with the vampire lords and the High Lord. Right after entering the castle, Goran starts slicing through all the vampire that appear in their path. After a short while, they reach the castle's depths. Before entering the High Lord's room, Locke warns Ja to assess the situation instead of attacking blindly. Suddenly, a large group of vampire cuts them off from the back. Locke prepares to fight them all, but Eric and Goran tell him to go ahead without them. They remind him that if the time turns to night, the vampire High Lord will get an increase in his magic power, which will only make it harder to kill him. At the moment, the two of them are strong enough to take care of all these vampire lords on their own. Still, Locke points out that 30 vampire lords is an insane number to fight at once. Hearing this, both Eric and Goran remind him that he did the same thing for them years ago. Now, they have the chance to tell him to leave and get out as soon as he can. Hearing this, Locke finally agrees with their demand. He grabs Ja and heads to the High Lord's room. Inside, the young High Lord lazily awaits them. As he stares in their direction, Ja feels incredible pressure. However, Locke is more interested in a prison behind the High Lord. From this distance, he can't identify the person inside there. She begins to speak, but suddenly, the High Lord attacks Locke before she can react. Thankfully, Locke blocks his strike. Even the High Lord is impressed by his skills, so he starts to take him more seriously. Then, he tries to charm Locke, which fails to work. As his spell fails, the High Lord retreats, but Locke catches up to him and attacks with his sword. Although the High Lord blocks it with magic, his barrier breaks from Locke's attack, causing his finger to get cut. Then, she attacks the High Lord, but he easily dodges it. This distraction gives Locke the chance to cut off his arm. She thinks they actually have a chance in this fight. However, the High Lord only laughs at this grievous injury, easily regenerating his broken arm like it's nothing. Finally, Locke realizes that he's in for a really long fight. While Locke and Ja face the High Lord, Goran and Eric face their own enemies in the hall. As a group of vampire lords attacks Goran, he cuts through them, all using his flame sword. Behind him, Eric reminds him not to exhaust himself by fighting all the vampires on his own. At this, Goran says that he's only protecting the king of his nation. As Eric is distracted by him, a female vampire suddenly appears before him. He swats her away, but she clones herself to fight him 2 against 1. Eric is still unafraid of her, but suddenly, a third clone sneaks behind him and bites his neck. Then, she licks off his blood, giving her the power to control his mind. For a moment, Eric stands motionless as if he's entered a trance. The vampire's clones come closer, thinking they've won against him. Right then, he snaps out of his daze and kills 2 of the clones with 1 attack each. Seeing this, the final clone backs off in fear, shocked that her mind control didn't work on him. First, Eric shows her his wedding ring to keep her away, before reminding her that heroes are incredibly resistant to mental debuffs. Then, he finishes her off, clearing out all of the enemies in the room. Meanwhile, in the throne room, Locke continues fighting with the High Lord. During their clashes, he notes that the High Lord's damaged arm is moving slower than before, even after healing. This gives him and Ja the upper hand over their foe. As he gets attacked from 2 directions, the High Lord gets angry, but Locke attacks him again with a Drain Touch spell. The spell causes the High Lord to recoil in pain, so Locke takes this chance to cut his body in 2. In this moment, the High Lord realizes he can't win, so he tries to escape by transforming into bats. Seeing this, Locke quickly shouts at Mr. Gerberga, who stops the High Lord from transforming. Although this action exposes Mr. Gerberga's location, Locke doesn't care, since he's confident in protecting the mighty chicken. However, the High Lord laughs, revealing that this is exactly what his High Lords wanted. With the Seraphal so close to him, he breaks a cursed medallion that opens a dark rift. This rift channels powerful energy from the Dark Lord's dimension, holding Locke and Ja down with incredible pressure. Even as the mighty saint, Locke finds himself unable to move. Meanwhile, the High Lord gains a blessing from the dark power, enhancing his strength even more. With his confidence restored, the High Lord proudly reminds Locke that this power comes from the Dark Lord's barrier. Usually, the royal capital is protected by the church's barrier, which keeps the vampires at bay. Now, the vampires are using the same technique against their human enemies. As Locke struggles to move, the High Lord floats closer to him, wanting to steal Mr. Gerberga. Somehow, at the last moment, Locke gets enough strength to grab his sword sword and run away. Surprised, the High Lord attacks him with a magic spell, but Locke blocks it with a double barrier. In reality, he's not moving using his own muscles, but by using a spell called Marionette. He can force his body to move with magic control. With his movement restored, Locke rushes towards the curse core to destroy the barrier. The High Lord tries to stop him, but suddenly just slashes at him out of nowhere. Angered, he blows her away with a spell, calling her a filthy dog. Thanks to a magic shield from Locke, she easily survives the attack and reminds him that she's a wolf. While the High Lord is distracted, Locke reaches the dark core. Somehow, the High Lord appears in front of him before he can slash the core apart. He stops the sword with one hand, grinning smugly at the struggling Locke. Even after trying his best, Locke is unable to move the sword, so the High Lord starts taunting him. However, Locke tells him to shut up and points to his hand. Surprised, the High Lord realizes that his sword has cut through his hand. Behind him, the dark core also gets trapped by a holy barrier. This barrier is coming from the royal church, combining the powers of all the priests and the queen. As the High Lord realizes this, he wonders how the humans were able to create such a powerful barrier. Unfortunately for him, the holy barrier disables the dark core's effects, so Locke slashes him apart before destroying the core. After losing all his power, the High Lord tries one last attempt to escape, but Mr. Gerberga seals his fate with a cry. Finally, the stubborn High Lord crumbles to dust, and the world is saved from the threat of the Dark Lords. Then, Locke checks Anja to make sure she's okay. After checking, he walks over to the cage in the corner of the room, which contains a sleeping wolf. Locke wonders if the wolf was the High Lord's familiar, but J explains that it's actually a sacred beast. Apparently, J's Beastman tribe and the sacred wolves are descended from the same creature in myths. Because of this, both species highly respect each other. Hearing that it's a sacred beast, Locke wonders if the wolf has any strange powers like Mr. Gerberga. However, J reveals that it doesn't have any power outside those of a normal wolf. She thinks that the High Lord only captured this wolf to perform research on its bloodline in his free time. She also tells Locke that the wolf can understand humans, so they should be safe in its presence. Hearing this, Locke opens the cage with a spell and calls for the wolf to wake up. For some reason, it keeps snoring without a care in the world. Soja reminds Locke that it's under the effects of his sleeping spell. This reminds him to undo the spell, which instantly causes the wolf to wake up. For a second, the wolf is stunned at the sight of Locke smiling at it. Then, it roars out of fear and attacks, thinking he's a threat. While Locke screams at J for misleading him, she quickly explains to the wolf that he's a good man who saved him from the vampires. After hearing this, the wolf calms down and becomes ashamed. Still, Locke forgives it, since it must have been scared for its life. Now that it's free, the wolf roams around the large room happily. Then, Locke and J walk back to the main halls to reunite with Goran and Eric. As they turn around, Locke explains that the job is done. Goran smiles in response, but he is surprised by the wolf following them. Meanwhile, Locke asks Eric to thank his wife for the holy barrier. Eric says that she would appreciate a personal thanks from the sage himself, so Locke wonders if he had previously planned to use the holy barrier with her. However, he reveals that Lefi acted on her own since she knew her husband needed help. Afterward, they all head out of the abandoned temple together. To Locke's surprise, the Beastmen are all outside, cheering for their victory. Eric thinks that they're cheering for the sage, but Locke doesn't think he deserves it. Then, Goran lets the king handle the official business. After stepping forward, Eric proudly announces that he has defeated the High Lord through the combined efforts of his friends. Speaking confidently to the crowd, he makes all of them perform a loud victory cheer. Seeing everyone celebrate his win, Locke feels happy. After spending 10 years alone against the demons, it's a nice change of pace to have his friends' support. Later, as the party is on their way back to the capital, the wolf keeps following them. Locke thinks that it's confused about where to go, so he tells the wolf it's free to do whatever it wants. However, it refuses to leave him. Soja points out that it must want to follow him. Hearing this, Locke gets annoyed, since he doesn't want the responsibility of a pet. Still, everyone else tells him to adopt the poor thing, so he gives in in and accepts the wolf as part of his family. After a while, they all reach the royal palace, where the two princesses are waiting for them, as they inform the party that Celis and Lucira protected them from vampires while they were gone. Locke notices a big pile of vampire gems beside the two, counting 20 gems in total. He feels surprised that these rookies could handle so many vampires on their own. Hearing this, Celis thinks it's not a big deal since the vampires were only lesser. However, Locke finds 2 arch-vampire gems in the pile, so Celis casually admits that some vampires felt a lot stronger than the others. Nearby, Eric and Goran react with a lot more shock after seeing this young girl defeat such powerful foes without a care. Locke praises Celis for her incredible strength, while Goran struggles to hold back his emotions. Celis wonders what's wrong, so he forces out a few words of praise for her. Seeing this, Locke teases him for getting embarrassed, while Lucira feels envious of Celis for having a supportive family. While the group is having fun, Eric feels worried that the arch-vampires could enter the capital despite the holy barrier around it. Somehow, they must have sneaked into the barrier or defeated it using their dark powers, which means that the barrier needs an upgrade. Thinking about the security issues, Locke asks Eric to include the beastskin in the military, since they cannot be charmed by vampires. Eric thinks that his suggestion makes sense, especially since the beastskin helped them fight the vampires. Hearing this, Ja feels honored that her tribe will gain a new status from the king. Speaking about new statuses, Eric realizes that he needs to reward everyone who participated in the battle. This includes Locke, who played the biggest role in defeating the High Lord. He asks Locke if he'd like anything particular, so he thinks about the offer. Then, after seeing Lucira and the wolf, Locke realizes he doesn't have a place to keep them, so he tells Eric to give him a big house for his family. Hearing this, Eric is surprised, as he had expected something greater. Elsewhere, in the city, a homeless young girl snoops around, struggling to find food. With great effort, she manages to reach a fruit tree and pluck a juicy fruit from one of its branches. After picking the fruit, she goes back to the city and takes a bite. While walking in the alleys, she encounters 2 dangerous-looking men. At the sight of these men, the girl quickly runs away, dropping her fruit in the process. Luckily, she turns a corner and sneaks inside a building to hide from them. Meanwhile, Locke is surprised by the giant house Eric gave him. Looking at the building, Goran thinks it's actually small for an archduke's mansion, but Locke is more than satisfied. After entering the building, Locke appreciates the giant rooms, but he thinks it'll be a huge pain to clean it. Thankfully, Lucira offers to clean it, happy to make himself useful. He picks out a room for himself, so Locke agrees, but Celis goes ahead and decides to stay as well. Locke tells her to go back home, but she thinks she deserves to stay in his house as his apprentice. Afterward, Goran asks Locke if he likes the house. Locke nods, noticing a giant watchtower connected to the building. Since he likes to be alone, he picks the watchtower for his own room. Aside from this, he leaves the wolf in the massive backyard. After adopting him as a pet, he has given it the name Garb. Later that night, while Locke is sleeping, Lucira hesitantly wakes him up. He explains that he heard some creepy noises from the basement on the way to the bathroom, so Locke follows him to investigate. As they open the basement door, the strange noises get louder and louder. Soon, they walk to a door in the basement, where the sound gets even clearer. Behind the door, a strange girl is crying in pain, which shocks both Locke and Lucira. Hearing the unsettling noises, Lucira wonders if an undead has snuck into their basement. As Locke opens the door, he steps forward to light up the dark room. However, when he casts the light spell, he runs into a horrifying woman hanging upside down, causing him to scream in terror. At first, Lucira runs back to Locke, thinking it's a ghost. Upon taking a closer look, he realizes that the hanging woman is just a small girl hung from a trap. This poor girl asks the two of them to let her down, so Locke quickly takes her down and asks if she's hurt anywhere. Thankfully, the girl wasn't hurt badly, so she thanks Locke for saving her. He wonders how she ended up trapped in his basement, but Lucira tells him to get away from the girl, thinking she's a burglar. Still, Locke refuses to throw the girl away after seeing how bad she's doing. First, he learns that the girl is called Milka. Then, he introduces himself and Lucira to her, wondering why she was snooping around in his house. Milka explains that she was just looking for an abandoned house to sleep in, but she didn't realize that they were living here. Unfortunately, before she could go anywhere, the trap caught her and kept her suspended in the air. She also reveals that she's an orphan who was under her grandfather's care. Unfortunately, Sadly, her grandpa got tricked into debt and died recently. Hearing this, Locke wonders if she's on the run to avoid the loan sharks from enslaving her. However, Milka shakes her head, and Lucira explains that King Eric abolished slavery, so the loan sharks cannot threaten her. Locke feels grateful that Eric is being a good king to his nation. He then wonders how Milka even entered his basement since there are no external entrances. She explains that this basement connects to the sewers through a hidden passageway, which allowed her to sneak in. Locke quickly checks the passageway she mentioned and realizes that he completely overlooked this area. After years of fighting alone, he has forgotten his adventurous skill of scouting a place for traps before moving in. Still, he feels curious about why this mansion has a hidden passageway anyway, to prevent any other unwanted intruders from sneaking in. He decides to block the hole connecting his basement with the passage. Milka smiles, happy to help him find the hole. As the three of them enter the passageway, Lucira notes that it's quite long. Locke is also surprised, but he has no answers at the moment. Soon, they reach the hole in the wall where Milka snuck through. Just a little while ago, she was hiding in the sewers when she got a lucky break and found this hole. Seeing how the wall has collapsed around the hole, Locke realizes that it just broke down due to wear and tear, so his house is not under immediate threat of an intruder. Still, Locke wants to see the end of the passage, so he decides to walk further down. Before they can move, Milka hesitantly asks Locke if she can sleep in the quiet passageway, since it's cleaner than the sewers and safe from dangerous people. Hearing this, Locke tells her that he'll make this decision after seeing what's at the end of the passage. Milka nods and rushes forward to take the lead. Locke stops her, pointing out that she might run into traps ahead of them. She nods, thinking that she should be at the front because of this. Locke wonders why, since it could cause her to get stuck or seriously hurt. To protect her, he decides to take the lead, with her and Lucira following behind. At his suggestion, Milka wonders why he isn't pushing her to go ahead, since, in her mind, if they encountered a dangerous trap, she would be the one to get hurt while they could escape. At these horrifying words, Locke reassures the little girl that he would never use a child as a shield. Milka is stunned to hear this, since throughout her entire life, she has only seen rich people abuse the poor for their own good. Then, she realizes that Locke is a nice rich guy and decides to trust him. In addition, Locke tells her that he's a veteran adventurer, so he can easily avoid traps. Hearing this, she gets excited to see his abilities. After some walking, they reach the end of the passageway, which seems to be a dead end. However, both Locke and Lucira can sense that something lies beyond the wall, which is locked with a magic seal. Since this wall is protected so securely, Locke suggests that the room behind the wall could hold something special, like a hidden treasure vault. At the mention of treasure, the poor Milka gets even more excited, wondering if she'll finally strike it rich. Since there's no way to tell without going inside, Locke scans the magic seal and breaks it open with a dispel spell. As the seal is broken, the wall crumbles into bits, leading them into a strangely familiar room. While Lucira is surprised, Milka wonders if she can sleep in this room, since it seems empty. However, Locke reminds her that the house is probably occupied, since the residents wouldn't know about the secret passageway. Also, even if the house were empty, it would still be illegal to sleep in it without legal permission. Suddenly, they hear footsteps approaching the room, so they all hide behind a sofa. Then, the door opens and Eric's voice rings out. In an instant, Locke gets up, knowing that this place was his friend's home the entire time. Eric is surprised to see him, while Locke wonders why the king's guards didn't come to check the room. Hearing this, Eric explains that this room is quite close to his own bedchambers, so he came to look by himself. Locke apologizes for the sudden intrusion before telling Milka and Lucira that it's safe to come out. Seeing the two kids, Eric recognizes Lucira, but not Milka, so Locke pats her head and introduces her to him. Eric nods, accepting her without another question. Then, they all sit down, and Locke explains that they accidentally entered through the secret passageway. After hearing this, Eric nods, and Locke realizes that he's not very surprised. Eric explains that he already knows the story behind the secret passage, but it's too embarrassing to explain out loud. It turns out that Eric's grandfather had a secret lover, so he connected his palace to her mansion, using the secret passage to avoid getting caught by the queen. The previous king's lover was a widowed baroness whose husband had died, while her son had married into a higher-ranked noble family, leaving her all alone. After the king and baroness died, the entrance to the palace was blocked off with the magic magic seal until Locke broke it open. Hearing this story, Locke understands everything and asks Eric if he wants to block the entire passage. However, Eric doesn't mind having the passage leading to his house, since it will only increase their safety. Locke nods, then seals up the hole created by the broken magic seal. Then, as he prepares to head back home, Milka starts sleeping against a cold wall, feeling bad for the poor girl. Locke picks her up and starts carrying her home. Lucira also feels pity for the little girl, knowing that she survives on the streets all alone. He points to the fruit she brought, noting that it tastes sour and unripe. Seeing the girl's desperate state, he begs Locke to let her stay in their mansion. At his words, Locke smiles, saying that he never planned on abandoning Milka from the start. Happy to hear this, Lucira follows him, and soon they return home, where Locke tucks Milka into a bed of her own. In the morning, the little girl wakes up after a comfortable sleep, surprised by her new surroundings. She walks out of her room to explore the building, finding herself in yet another giant mansion. She wonders if she's still in Eric's room. Then, her stomach starts growling loudly, so she decides to look for food. However, she then realizes that another creature is growling loudly right in front of her. It's Garb, who thinks she's a burglar since he doesn't recognize her. Milka starts screaming, which wakes up the entire house. Soon, Locke rushes out and tells Garb to let the poor girl go. After the wolf releases her, Milka wonders where she is, surprised by the commotion. Lucira and the other girls also pop their heads out. Since the other girls don't know her, Locke introduces Milka to them and explains that she'll stay in their mansion from now on. Hearing this, Milka is shocked, while the girls accept her without a second thought. Since the young girl would feel guilty staying in his house for free, Locke decides to put her in charge of cleaning the place. Milka smiles, happy to earn her keep in a good home. To get her started, Locke tells her to ask Lucira for help, who also feels happy at the addition of a new family member. Then, everyone notes that Milka is hungry, so they quickly set up breakfast. Later, Goran comes to have breakfast with everyone. While the adults chat away, Milka enjoys the fine noble cuisine. After eating rotten meat and unripe fruits for the past few months, the little girl feels overjoyed to taste these luxury dishes. After Goran learns about the secret passageway, he finally realizes why this mansion has the suspicious watchtower. Locke explains that he'll reinforce the walls of the old passageway and seal the hole that exposes it to the sewers. Goran wonders what he'll do about the entrance to the royal palace, so he tells him that he'll install a locked door there. Since Eric wants to keep the passage open, it's nice to have an emergency exit for both sides. Still, she wonders why the Baroness installed a trap on her side of the secret passage, so Locke reminds her that she probably wanted to keep unwanted visitors like the queen away from her. Nearby, as Milka enjoys her food, Celis asks if she wants more. She nods happily and calls her big sister while asking for more. Hearing these sweet words, Celis' heart bursts with love, and she starts doting on her even more. Afterward, Ja and Goran prepare to leave for the Adventurers Guild, so Locke tells them to say hi to Ginny and Ario for him. While they prepare to leave, Milka wants to start cleaning, but Lucira explains that they haven't bought any cleaning supplies yet. Since this is the case, Locke tells them to come with him to the market for cleaning supplies. Sometime later, they arrive at the market, where Lucira leads Locke to a stone dealer to repair the broken wall. While Locke handles the deal with the stone seller, he asks Milka to wait outside the shop with Garb. She nods and sits outside and notices a tools shop nearby. Since they're supposed to buy cleaning tools soon, Milka rushes off to check them out on her own. However, while she's at the shop, a strange man approaches her with evil intentions. Soon, Locke and Celis walk out of the stone shop, only to find Milka missing. Celis learns from the tool seller that some strange men dragged Milka away, so Locke tells Garb to sniff out their scent. While he rushes behind Garb to track the men, Milka is backed into a corner. She wonders why the men are causing trouble for her, so they claim that they want her to pay the debt. Milka reminds them that they already claimed her dead grandfather's house, so she doesn't have anything else to pay them with. Also, she points out that a government official exempted her from the debt. Unfortunately, the bandits don't care about her situation and start threatening her to pay up. Thankfully, Locke arrives just in time. One of the men wonders if he'll pay off the debt for her, but Locke reminds him that she doesn't owe him a single cent. Still, the man refuses to let her go, so Locke knocks him out with a knee. Then, he beats up the other thugs while Celis comforts Milka. Angered by the men's cruelty, she tells Locke to get them arrested. However, he tells her to wait for him him to check something before turning them in. Then, he uses an illusion spell to appear as a local gangster. In a furious tone, he asks the bandits' leader why they were causing trouble on his territory. The man tells him that he was only following the orders of Mr. Cavino, who is a big-shot moneylender in the slums. In reality, Cavino wanted these men to capture Milka and sell her into slavery, since he knew that she couldn't pay off her debt. After learning this, Locke knocks out the man and calls the cops. Once the police arrive, they explain that Mr. Cavino is actually a very dangerous person. Although he's only a lone shark in the slums, Cavino seems to have a private army of his own that does his bidding. In addition, he also has connections with the city's elite, so he has never been arrested for his crimes. Meanwhile, in Cavino's mansion, he learns that his henchmen were arrested after messing with an adventurer. Since they were beaten by an adventurer, he decides not to pursue the matter to avoid trouble with the Adventurers Guild. For now, he orders his men to move their slaves elsewhere. Then, he calls 2 C-ranked mercenaries to protect his men while they transport the slaves. Hearing their names called, the 2 mercenaries correct him, explaining that they used to be C-rank when they got banned by the guild. However, after years of training, they have become strong enough to be considered B-rank elites, so they're confident in defeating any adventurer who comes their way. Later that night, as Cavino's men are preparing the slave caravan, Locke arrives to confront them. Cavino orders his men to get him, but he easily takes them out. While Cavino is shocked by his strength, the 2 B-ranked mercenaries confidently step up to face him. Just then, Je and Celis appear, ready to back up Locke against these disgusting criminals. That was episode 7. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.